In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these trick-or-treat bags. They're just ideal for your littlies to take out trick-or-treating at Halloween. Now we're going to construct the pumpkin, which is our decorative part. So the first thing we're going to do is cut out the backing, so that's the black in this case, but for our bag we're making now we're using the purple. I've already attached the applique sheet to the back. Now the applique sheets, you may have received some with your ScannCut. That's the white sheets. You may also receive some blue sheets, but they're not for applique. They're a fabric sheet and they get attached to a mat. So this is what you need to use for applique. It's the white sheets. So we're using the Brother, as I say, the Brother ScannCut applique sheets. So we need to attach it to our mat. I'll just move this one away. We take our standard mat and just attach our piece of fabric with our applique backing on it. So we'll go ahead now and select the pattern and show you how to cut it out. So we're going to select our pattern and we're picking the pumpkin and we're making it 12 in height. Now just remembering that this height here is the complete pumpkin. When we go to the next screen you'll see that the height changes because it doesn't take into account the stem. We're going to do the back. And that's what I mean, it's now changed the height to 9.85. We also need to check our settings. We've got it on cut pressure 4. And we also have our blade on 4. Press set. Let's move it away from the edges a little bit. Okay. And cut. So that's our back part. Now we're going to cut out the front of our pumpkin face. I've got my piece of fabric here already with a piece of the applique sheet ironed onto it, as you can see. It's still set at the 12, so the settings that I made for the back will maintain until I finish cutting out the whole thing. So we'll just go OK. Select the front. Okay. And we just cut it out. What will happen is then I'll be able to applique this, iron this onto the backing piece. The backing piece will be ironed onto the bag, and then you just applique around it in whatever stitch that you like. Okay, so it's cut. We'll finish. So we leave this on because it stops the back from sticking to the mat. But you can peel that off. Alright, so there you go. And now I'm going to cut the stem. So we just select our pattern. There we go. Set. I just move it down a little bit from the top. Okay. And there we are. So there's our stem. Now I've cut my piece of webbing at 94 inches and I've taken the two ends and I've sewn them together with a zigzag stitch. So just overlap them slightly and then zigzag so that that holds it together nicely. Now we don't want this join showing, so what I'm going to do is place that join onto the 0 on my cutting mat and measure 14 inches, and this is where I'm going to fold my handle in half. Right, now I'm going to measure down 8.5 inches, and that's where the handle, when I'm sewing it on, is going to stop at the top of the bag. So I'll just mark 8.5 on each side, each strap, and then run it through my fingers down to the other end and mark the 8.5 inches again. Now when I sew this handle to my bag, this will be with finish at the top of the bag, and the join is going to sit underneath the pumpkin face, so we're not going to see that, and this will finish at the other end of the bag. As you remember, our bag is being sewn in one strip. So this is the front of our bag, and so what I've done is I've drawn 2 marks on either side, and they're 2.5 inches in from the edge on each side, and that's where our handles are going to sit. They're going to butt up to that line there. So 2.5 inches in from each side. So what we're going to do now is this line here will come against the edge here, and our handle will butt up to that line that we drew onto the front of our bag.
So you can see the line there.
Yep.
It's the line we drew all the way down the bag, the length of the bag. And we're just going to butt it up to that line there. So on the other side of the line. Don't put it on this side of the line, because if you put it on this side of the line, what you're going to get is a very small little spot here to do your seam. So it needs to be on the other side of the line there.
So we're going to do that with both sides, but both of them up to that line, and also make sure that or near enough, it doesn't have to be exact, that our lines are at the edge of the bag. As you can see, I've pinned the handles on. Now you want to leave 1/4 inch at the top here when we come to sew, but what we're going to do is sew at about 1/16 of an inch down the edge. So we'll come right down, and when we get to here we'll stop 1/4 inch from the top, and then we'll go over to the other side. So we're not going to sew across there, go across the other side and sew down about 1/16 of an inch all the way down, and we'll stop 1/4 inch from the top again, and we'll do that on both sides. So as you can see, I have my handles attached, and I've left the 1/4 inch up at the top here so that I can attach my lining. And the next thing we're going to do after that is to bring in our pumpkin face. Now you might want to just fold your bag in half so that you get a bit of a crease, because you don't want to have your pumpkin face down too far. You also want to make sure that you're going to put on the side where we did our join and our handle, because we want to cover that. So see there, I've got my join, but my pumpkin face is going to cover it. I'm putting both pieces down together, and what I'll do is iron them all on at the one time. And then we have our stalk. We don't want to be too high up, because remember we're going to have a seam along here, so we need to make sure that our stalk is not too far to the top, that we've got our seam covered, and we're not too far to the bottom. I've positioned my pumpkin face where I want him, and now I'm going to press this on. You'll need to use a cloth, because if you use the iron straight on this nylon webbing, you'll find that it will melt. So I have a cloth which I'm going to lay on top. Just have a check and see if that's working. Yep. Press there. Okay, So it's ready to applique on now. Alright, so now I'm going to go and top stitch this on. I'm going to use a top stitch because I'm not terribly good at applique. So I'll top stitch right round here. I'll do my green stem and around the eyes and the mouth. So I have my pumpkin face appliqued on, and now I'm going to attach the lining. So the first thing to do is to fold our handles in out of the way. So this is why we left the 1/4 inch seam at the beginning, if you remember. So we're going to place the lining right sides to the right side of our main piece. We're going to pin along here, along the short sides. We're not going to sew down the long sides just yet because there is another step there that I need to show you for that. So we're just going to pin along the short sides, and then I'm just going to sew along the short sides. Just making sure I don't sew over the handle. So I'll go and do that, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next step. So I've sewn the short ends. I've sewn right across one end with a 1/4 inch seam, and at the other end I've also used a 1/4 inch seam, but I've left a gap of about 4 inches. So there's a gap there between the lining and the main piece, and that's because we'll use that gap to turn our bag through. Now this next bit's a little bit tricky. So come down to around about the middle of the bag, take your lining piece in one hand and your main piece in the other, and pull them apart. Right, so we have lining piece one side, main piece the other. What we're going to do now is to just match up those seams because we want them to join together nicely on both sides. Just make sure you keep your handles back in the bag out of the way. Okay, and just smooth that down, and we're going to pin down each side, and next we're going to sew again with 1/4 inch seam right from one end to the other. Okay, so do that down each side. So I'm going to go now and sew this together, and then I'll come back and I'll show you exactly what you need to do next. So as you can see now, I've sewn the bag together with a 1/4 inch seam right down both sides. Now all I'm going to do is clip the corners, and I like to sort of take them, make sure you don't clip your stitching, take them close and then cut them back a bit just to remove a little bit of the bulk on all 4 edges. Okay, and then we're going to turn the bag through. So remember our opening that we left on one short side. And here we go. Just going to bring the bag through. Just remember it's a little bit stiff with all that applique paper on it. Off quickly. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to close that opening by top stitching around the top of the bag. So I'll go and finish it off, and then we'll come back and show you the finished product. So I've just pressed it round now, make it nice and neat, and press the opening seams down. Now I'm just going to pin those together to keep them stable while I sew. I'm not going to worry about pinning the rest of the bag. And we're going to top stitch it all around the top edge now with I'm going to use the 1/16 of an inch, but you can use an 1/8 or whatever you like. So I'll start at the side seam here. Okay. Just go back. And we're going to sew over our handles, so that's going to add a bit more strength to them. Just make sure that our lining this below. There we go. And across over our opening. You can see how quick and easy it is to make these bags. So there's the finished bag. Doesn't it look great? I think it looks great. And it's just ready now for your child to take out on Halloween night and get filled with lots of yummy treats.